Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us. Today we are super excited to be talking to you about the latest version of Enscape 3.0, which we released on March 3rd. Today we will spend some time looking at why we've not only overhauled the Enscape user interface, but also rebranded. And of course, we will show you what has changed with 3.0 and walk you through the new features and functionality in a live demo as well. We're going to have time for Q&A, so please send your questions in via the chat pane and we'll get to as many as those a little bit later on. So before I introduce our speakers, I just wanted to quickly highlight a few places where you can go to learn more about Enscape. So first up, we have the knowledge base where you can find detailed support articles. And then we have the blog where you can find the latest product news and interesting articles. And both the knowledge base and the blog, you can find those on our website. And lastly, there is our YouTube channel where you can find a wealth of video tutorials from the Enscape team and our community of users. So I'd encourage you to check those out after the webinar. So with me today are three colleagues who will be presenting to us. First up, we have Peter Mitev, who is the head of AEC technology here at Enscape. Then we have Kai Baraval and Josh Ruddle, who are part of our customer services and training team. So I'm sure you're very keen for us to get started. So I'm going to pass over to Peter now so we can kick off the presentation. Thank you so much, Peter.
Awesome, thank you very much. So I'll kick things off here, and Kai and Josh have a fantastic demo for you guys, so I'm going to try and waste as little time as possible, but we're really excited about the things that are happening here at Enscape, and we want to share them with you. So the first thing that we're very excited about is our new look. And if you've already been on social media, if you've been on our website, you've seen this no doubt, but we also want to share what it means for us. And it's really a lot more than just a rebrand or a new aesthetic. We want to recognize that over these years, our company and our community have grown and changed over time. So for us, this is really an opportunity to recognize that change, recognize that growth, and really try to think about who we are today in the AEC tech industry, and try to also think about who we want to be in this community, and think about the ways that we want to engage with you all and continue to deliver powerful things for you to use every day. And with that comes a couple of new things. The first one is our redefined mission, which is to unleash the creativity of the builders of tomorrow through continuous innovation in accessible design technology. And you see that emphasis there, and I want to hit on it extra hard, because for us, this is really the core of Enscape and the core of Enscape DNA. We recognize that AEC is a very, very collaborative profession. It's impossible to design and deliver a building on your own. It doesn't matter how small it is or how simple it might look. And we recognize that in order to bring up the whole industry, the level of all of us together, we really need to be impacting everybody. And this is a very, very diverse team, project, composition that we see everywhere across the industry, not just country to country, but even within. We see incredible flavors of uniqueness, and we want to recognize that. We want to really align ourselves with the design process and make sure that our tools can reach everybody out there. And with that comes our vision, which is to make the built environment tangible before it exists. And it's a bit of a tall order, admittedly, but it's something that we're always trying to pursue. Buildings are getting more and more complex. Schedules are getting shorter. I think everybody here that's listening to this knows that. And we want to make sure that we recognize the challenges that puts on the entire design and delivery team, and of course, on the communities that are going to live in and experience these parts of the built environment. And we really want to bring as holistic of an understanding as we can to this design. We want to understand all the aspects of it before we actually commit to building it and making a permanent contribution to the environment. And like I said, Kai and Josh are going to take you through all of these features in a lot more detail, but I want to highlight some of my favorite ones and just kind of hit on how this strategy is playing into these features and the way that we think about them when we start building our roadmaps and then start building these products. So the first one that you're going to see, if you haven't already, is the evolution of our interaction design. So this is something that we've wanted to do for a very long time, and this is something that the community has also been asking of us. And just like our rebrand, this is much more than an aesthetic facelift or recomposition. We really try to understand how people are working with our tools, and we did that from kind of a high-level perspective, from a data-driven perspective, but also from just listening to what you guys are saying and posting on the forums and engaging with our customer support. And we really think that this is much more than that nice-to-have aesthetic. This is really something that could make it easier for people to engage with Enscape. Again, Kai and Josh will talk about some of those challenges, but things like the single monitor workflow, things like the relationship between the BIM tool and Enscape. We think that these are interactions that have been really not necessarily simplified, but optimized to help you work the way that you want to work rather than the way that a tool is telling you to work. The second exciting feature for me is the local assets. So when we think about the design process, we know that being contextualized is huge. There is no such thing as copying and pasting a building between two different sites. I mean, there might be, but at that point it becomes a whole nother building and a whole nother experience. And we want to recognize this because we have customers all across the globe, and luckily that number of customers is growing, but we also need to make sure that we are providing the right assets that contextualize their designs and really give them the power to create and tell the story in the way that they need to do it. Last but not least is our website redesign. And for me, this might be honestly my favorite. I know it's not exactly a part of the core Enscape product, but it's a highway for information that we really think is a huge value for our community. We want to make this a fantastic resource for all of you out there, whether you're existing Enscape users or whether you've never seen Enscape before. But we want this to be a one-stop shop where you can, at a glance, see what you're going to get, see what you can expect, and again, be connected to any kind of support, training, tutorials that you might need at any given time. And again, going back to our point of accessibility, we really hope that this is going to help push that goal forward by making it even more accessible and tangible for everybody out there. So that kind of brings the end of my introduction. I want to hand it over to Kai and Josh right now. They're going to do some hands-on demos for you guys, and they're really going to dive into some of these features. Kai, you want to take it away?
I want to. Thank you very much, Peter. So let's see. I hope I'm going to share the right screen. Let me just check. Where are we? There we are. That's looking all right. So yeah, we are here to give you a more in-depth look on the actual changes in Enscape, in the design interface and the user interface in Enscape. As you see, we will be presenting in Revit for today. As always, the changes or the updates that you will see are valid for all the CADs. So whether or not you're using Enscape with Revit, SketchUp, Rhino, ArchiCAD, or Vectorworks, everything we discuss here should be applicable to your experience. And yeah, if you haven't downloaded Enscape 3.0 yet and haven't had a look at it yet, this might look new to you. As Peter already mentioned, we have changed very much everything and also still kept most of it the same, so you can continue working right away. Again, we will have a detailed look at what has changed, what has stayed the same but looks different now. And before we do that, I would like to give it up to Josh to give us a before look of how things have been done in Enscape before. Josh?
Thank you, Kai. All right, let me share my screen here quick. Oh. It's not letting me. Oh. It keeps saying there's too many people attending. There we go. Can you see my screen okay? Each question?
Yes, we can, Josh.
Yep. All right. So a couple of features that we're going to look at that were in 2.9 and then they're obviously in 3.0 now. We're going to look at where the buttons were, and then Kai is going to show you where they are currently. So one of the things we're going to look at is how to take a screenshot. So the screenshot is over in your design application. So again, we're going to look at where the new 3.0 one is when Kai starts showing it. So in your design application, in this case, we're in Revit here, the take screenshot button was on a toolbar up in your Enscape tab here. This is where you had your three options right here to be able to take a screenshot. Another thing that was really big was the show safe frame. So this was kind of an overlooked feature. This feature right here to show safe frame, this was really when we were taking renderings, and if we were doing custom settings or even a 1920 by 1080 or a full or an Ultra HD for 4K, it would kind of zoom in a little bit, and we couldn't figure out why it was looking zoomed in or anything like that, or we really didn't get a good sense of what our final render was going to look like. So we had to go to this show safe frame button here, and then even then we still couldn't really see what our final output would look like until we went to take screenshot and then to take screenshot, and then we can see what our final preview is going to look like. So for instance, right here I have it set up to 1920 by 1080. I can see my context right here of my screen, and then I would have to confirm this is what I want to actually show, or this is what I want to actually render. I did have the option to adjust this as well if I needed to frame up that shot just on how I want it to look, and then I could click OK to produce the screenshot. So there's a couple clicks. It was kind of cumbersome, like Peter mentioned, the single frame or the single monitor use. I would have to keep jumping back and forth. Again, Kai is going to show you guys what the new features entail, where it's located and such. So that's the take screenshot and the show save frame button. Another feature that we're going to look at is the visual presets, the visual settings tab, and how we could save those presets and apply those to different views. Again, we're looking at this in 2.9. Kai is going to be showing us what the new 3.0, the more intuitive way to do this is. So if I wanted to apply a visual preset to a view, I would have to go back into the design application, get to that view. So for here, I'm just going to do a simple chair rendering. Again, quick and easy for demonstration purposes here. To load my preset, I would have to go into the visual settings tab, back in the design application, go to load preset from either the project or from the file itself. In this case, I have it saved to the project, and then I have my list of presets here. So I could toggle between my different ones, pick which one I like. I'm going to do this chair interior shot. I'm going to click OK, and then I can hit render. But what if I want to link that to a preset? Because notice if I switch to different views, that visual preset is the one that is applied to, it's basically like the default now. So that's the one that's being applied to everything. So to link those to different views, I'd have to go back in the design application, click this little check or this link right here to apply the view preset that I want to that view. So I'm going to hit chair interior. If I wanted to go to a different view to apply a different preset, I could simply click back to there, select the different views I want. Light view, we'll say from yard, or we'll do approach. We'll pick one from a white mode and such. Again, notice if I click between all the different views, they're not really taking effect. The model is being changed, but it's not really taking effect to the presets that I want. This would only show up with batch rendering. So I would have to go back to the design application, click the take screenshot button, and then hit batch rendering to see all those effects being applied. So that is the old way to do a couple of the features. Again, Kai is going to show you guys the new way to do this, the more intuitive way, the more faster, streamlined way to do this. So everybody have a nice look at the 2.9 interface and versions. Kai, you ready to take it away and show the new stuff?
Thanks a lot. All right, let me share my screen again, just making sure that you're seeing what you're supposed to see. And I have my drawing tools ready. Yeah, so so much to the previous user interface. I hope you had a good look at it, because we're not going to review it again. Instead, let's have a look at what has changed and what is new. First of all, as Josh already implied, there are some changes in functionality where we've just smoothened out some existing workflows, and we will have a look at these in detail. Before that, let me just go through the user interface on the design application side, just to once again confirm that we have a new design, we have a new interface, we have new buttons, but the functionality has stayed very much the same. A little bit of it just moved over to the Enscape side, and that is one of the major takeaways of this release. We just wanted to, we just spent a lot of thought on what is really useful in the Enscape environment, so to say, what really needs to stay on the design application side. And this allows to work more autonomously in Enscape. This doesn't mean at all, of course, you know that Enscape is always really close to your workflows and honors your workflows and takes the input directly from the CAD. That will stay like it is. Nothing will change about that. But we still want to streamline your way of working with Enscape. So you will see things like the screenshot, like the rendering buttons, the export buttons have moved entirely to the Enscape side. So if you want to, you can stay in full screen in Enscape and don't have to switch back and forth between the design application and your visualization all the time if you don't want to. So let's have a closer look at the user interface. Again, you know these things already, the pause live updates button, the asset library, the manage uploads button here. The functionality behind it, the interface here stayed the same. Of course, we have added a couple of assets. I've seen some comments already from the audience that you appreciate them. 333 assets. I hope it's okay for you if we don't have the time to cover these during this webinar. We will focus on functionality. Apart from that, if something like render an image into document is new for you, that is Revit specific, simply because of a functionality that Revit provides where you can manage image files in your Revit project. So once again, everything here pretty much stayed the same, but has a new look that also symbolizes our design change. Apart from that, the manage uploads window has stayed the same, placing sound sources, etc. Everything looks brand new, but functions the way you're used to. Let me just highlight one more thing for you. There we are. We now have 3 settings menus. One of them left in the design application, 2 of them we will find here. We'll have a closer look at that as well, just so you see the general settings here on the CAD side. Those are really the global settings for Enscape, things like network settings, the license, etc. The preferences, your language, for example. So those is what we deem are settings that you change once for Enscape and not on a per project basis. On the Enscape side, in terms of settings, of course, we have the visual settings where you can change your visual style, etc., like before. And we have the render window settings now, which were available in the general settings before, but we just thought these are at a better place here. And we will have a closer look at that as well. You also see already we have a little preview interface here where you can see the customization of your Enscape experience in detail. All right, so that is a little bit of the changes on the design application side. Let's put Enscape into full screen and have a look in detail on the, well, brand new, entirely new user interface in Enscape. We have had some panels here and there before, but now we have a consistent workflow and look of the user interface in Enscape. You see we have 2 sides here on our toolbar, the left and the right one, and in the middle we have a little triangle that you can click if you want to hide it to have the full Enscape view available. On the left side, the first button we have here is the home mode. This is essentially to close all the panels on the left side. You can also just press the escape key in order to achieve that. Next, we have the, well, no, before we go there, let me also have a look at the help, which you find here as a button. Wait a second, that's a little tiny. Let me draw an arrow for you as well. So here we have the help panel. Like before, you can still enable and disable it by pressing the H key, but you can also press this handy button at the top right. This is important for me to highlight as well. You see that we have a bigger controls overview here. So some functionality that wasn't displayed in the help automatically before, like for example, the Shift U and I and Control U and I keys, which allow you to move the sun contrary to its natural trajectory. So you can essentially move the sun anywhere you want here. Those were available before, but many people did not know about it. So we used this opportunity to also improve our help here and really put as many helpful tips in here as possible. So you have everything in view at all times. Something that is also new to this help interface is this second tab we have here. And that is an interactive tab, meaning whatever window you have opened on the left, this tab will adapt and show you helpful tips and tricks. So that's one of the main takeaways I want you to remember from this webinar. Whenever you get lost somewhere, have a look at this help in the top right, where we have added a lot of interesting or useful knowledge and tips and tricks. So you can always look up, well, if you don't know exactly what to do, you can look it up here. All right, so let's start from left now. We have the collaborative annotations panel, which you could open before only by pressing the C key or by right-clicking an object in Enscape. You can now also access it just clicking this button or still pressing the C key. Behind that, if you have played around with the collaborative annotations before, you will see that the design is new, but the functionality is the same. So you can still create an issue, save a or enter a title, enter a description, and yeah, change a state, save it or create the issue and leave comments. Like before, these collaborative annotations can be shared as BCF file directly from Enscape. You can still do that. You can still export it by clicking this icon up here, export issues to BCF, or you can communicate it using BIMTrack, or it's being saved automatically in your design application project file. Once again, be it Revit, SketchUp, Rhino, ArchiCAD, it's being saved right in that file. So if you're working with a team on one central file, for example, you can just hit save to exchange your comments and yeah, work collaboratively. Next up is the BIM mode. As before, you can still open it by pressing the B key, or you can click this button now. And right here, as you see, the functionality behind it stayed the same. So we access the BIM information that is stored in all of these Revit families, for example, like product or model number, pricing, weight, and yeah, other useful information. The next panel we will access on the left side is the view management. This is entirely new on the Enscape site. Before, we had a panel that you could access once you had favorite views marked on the design application site. Also, you could before already create views from Enscape into your design application, meaning 3D views in Revit, scenes in SketchUp, named views in Rhino, and so on and so forth. We have moved this entirely into Enscape because that's just what we think is really reasonable. We can open this by clicking this button or pressing the F key, and now you can access all of your views all the time right in Enscape. And as always, these will also honor, for example, geometry changes, like here, if you have a section cut, section box, section plane applied to a certain view, if you have objects hidden in a certain view, or design options applied, for example, in Revit, those changes will adapt automatically when changing the view at all times. And keep that in mind, because as Josh already implied earlier, we have added a new, or we have connected an existing functionality to these views that you can now access in real time, and we'll see, or we'll check that out a little bit later down the road. For now, I want you to remember that you can access these views by pressing the F key. You can switch through them. You can click this edit button to still mark them as favorite if you want to, or link a visual preset. And you can create a view by clicking this button here. So let's say I want to, I have maybe a nice perspective. Let's go with this one that I want to save for later. I'll just create view, create a view, call it something. And oh yeah, that one already exists. So let's call it living room 2, click create. And I never have to leave my Enscape window. I can stay in full screen here. But of course, it is communicating it to the design application itself. So now we have a living room 2 in here. And I can still navigate, jump back and forth, and return to that view whenever I want, just by clicking it in Enscape, in the Enscape window. Nice. Okay, let's have a look at the next button. That's the video editor. You will notice this one looks quite a bit different than before, so we will cover this last. I hope that is okay for you. Once again, all of these things apply to all of the design applications that you may use. So yeah, we'll leave this video editor for later to have a closer look at it. And I want to highlight for you this beauty here. That's our 3 export buttons, the video editor left out. Here is where you can create a rendering, where you can create a panorama, and where you can choose to export an exe standalone. So once again, we see Enscape a little bit like a camera or like a creative tool, of course, and it just fits to have the click button, the screenshot or snapshot button right here in the Enscape interface, so you can fly through Enscape in full screen, and whenever you have a perspective that you want to export as an image, you can click it right here. Or of course, like before, you can just click the hotkey that you have set in the Enscape settings, and in any way you will get your result right away. Mind these little arrows pointing down, or V shapes, or whatever you want to call it, where you can select multiple options for these export functionalities, like the batch rendering for the screenshot, like mono or stereo panorama, or like the exe offline standalone or the web standalone. So yeah, that's where you create your exports now. If you've been searching for it, that's the place. Okay, that's the left side of Enscape. Let's have a look at the right side of the interface. And there is this little icon indicating the mini map. You could before open the mini map by pressing the M key. Now you have it in this interface as well. Like before, you can scale the mini map, you can zoom in and out, and you can click anywhere to navigate. Of course, still you can press the M key to hide or unhide it. Next, that is one of the workflow improvements that we have added that Josh already implied earlier, a permanent save frame. So by clicking this button, you see at the sides of my Enscape interface. Now that if you haven't played or if you haven't worked with the save frame before, that might be a little confusing at first, so you might not know what this is useful for. As Josh implied, this is showing us the aspect ratio, the extent, the borders of our to be created image, video, whatever. This is very useful if you're creating views, and it's especially useful if you're going with a resolution that might be different from your screen. So for example, if you have like the windows scaled to non-full screen, for example, but also if you set a different output resolution. For example, if I want to go with a square rendering instead of this full HD one, I can adapt this resolution here, and I will always see those changes right away in Enscape. So I don't have to click the rendering, but I don't have to, enable the save frame in the Enscape settings, then go to the design application, press render, then return to Enscape, find that view, return to the design application and press render again. No, we can always access the save frame, so we can create views with our correct aspect ratio in mind, and so on and so forth. A little bit of a spoiler alert. I've implied that we have something more to connect you to your 3D views. It's not a big surprise. That is the visual settings. So the visual settings presets Josh has showed us earlier, we can now connect them to 3D views, and they will not only show up when batch rendering, they will also show up live in Enscape, which bears a incredible amount of creative solutions for you. One example of these could be you can set up a custom resolution per view. So yeah, if you want to export, manually, for example, but still have the resolution preset for each view, you can set it up. You can link these visual settings presets to your views. But of course, there's many more ways to utilize this feature, and we will have a look at that once we are finished with our overview of the Enscape user interface on the right side here. The next button, you're probably familiar with it, lets us change the perspective from a regular perspective to the architectural two-point perspective, or of course to the orthographic perspective. So you have the ultimately zoomed in effect, which means we have no distance distortion. All the objects will appear in their correct scale in your rendering. So that's also a nice way to generate outputs with Enscape. And if you want to combine it with a section cut, you can easily create floor plans this way. By the way, by pressing the 5 key on your numpad, you'll be positioned right away on top of it. So that's a quick way to create floor plan renderings. Next is the navigation mode toggle. We had this here before. We have this wing symbol for the fly mode and the walk or the steps here for walk mode. Like before, once you're in walk mode, you'll hit obstacles. If you're in fly mode, you can fly around freely and move through any obstacles. Next up is the VR headset button. Once again, just really useful to have this on the Enscape site and not have to switch to your design application to enable it. You can just start it whenever by clicking on the top right here. Awesome. Okay, so that leaves us with our visual settings and render window settings. I want to highlight one thing about the render window settings. As mentioned before, we now have this beautiful preview here. So if I decide to customize my Enscape experience, for example, with a custom icon, with a custom title, of course, which you see up here in the upper left corner, with a custom loading screen, let's go with this beautiful rendering, for example. And if I want to place a watermark, which means a interface overlay, if you have a PNG, it will respect transparency. You can always see here what your loading screen and what your interface overlay will look like. Yeah, apart from that, we have the input settings here. So if you ever wanted to change the speed of your movement, for example, or your screenshot hotkey, you can do that here. And let's now have a look at the visual settings presets. First of all, we have heard a couple questions where the visual settings management has gone. You can now access it here. This arrow here, if you click it on the left side, this will open the custom settings presets management tab right here. And yeah, let's just create a couple settings presets. Actually, if you don't mind me, I'll go back and remove my watermark. And yeah, let's set up a couple of settings presets. So I'll leave my custom preset and I'll create a new one. And let's call this, for example, white mode. And I'm just going to select it. Let's actually also add some outlines maybe to it. Then let's add another one, call it lighting analysis. There we are. And hit enter to save it and click light view. Let's create a new one and call it depth of field, for example, because I want to highlight, once we connect these to our 3D views, that you can, for example, set a distinctive depth of field distance for each view. So you can have whatever part of your rendering you want to have highlighted and be in focus, you can set it up or you can set it up per view. And yeah, let's go with that and open up our wait a second, before we go there, one more thing. I've already seen the question in the questions to this webinar. If you want to import your existing custom presets, of course, we didn't forget about you. You can do this using this button here. Let me highlight it for you. There we are. And that way you can import existing settings presets from previous Enscape versions. All right, so let's open up the view management and connect a couple of views to the visual settings or vice versa. So I'm just going to go, let's go with the living room and connect this to the white mode, for example. Let's actually set up a new view just for depth of field, because I want to have something that I can highlight nicely. How about that? Let's create a view and call it depth of field. And let's connect. I could have connected it right away. You've seen it. That wasn't very intuitive. All right. So now, yeah, that is connected. And let's go with the last view, maybe the solar analysis, so it fits the name, and connect it to our lighting analysis view. Now, if I switch through these views, By the way, let's first of all change our depth of field to have the right distance. So I'm just going to enable depth of fields. Forgot about that. Disable autofocus and choose a nice distance, maybe like that. Okay. You see, I don't have to save. It is being auto-saved, so any changes I perform will be applied right away. And as you also see, the last visual settings preset that I've had in the view will stay once I switch to that view, or sorry, will stay once I switch to the next view. So I'm just going to set a default setting to this one. And now, since we have the result, we can switch through these views, and you see that my visual settings presets are being applied in real time. So if I want to use this for a live presentation, I can now connect all of these update functionalities in Enscape together in one go, and I can store everything in my 3D views. That is the geometry changes from your CAD software, daytime, which is being saved in the views, and the Enscape visual settings, so we can freely switch between those and combine everything to one wholesome Enscape visualization, so to say, everything happening in your 3D views. Okay, so that's another, in my opinion, major step forward that I wanted to highlight here. To finish this off, our tour through the new Enscape interface, let's open up the video editor, because as mentioned, I wanted to keep that for last. We can now open the video editor by pressing the V key or clicking this button up here. That was previously the K key, now it's the V key. However, the functionality in its core has stayed the same still, so I can still generate a new keyframe, a waypoint for my camera to later on travel through to create a video, to render a video. I can still create these by pressing the K key, or I can click this button down here, this little plus button, to create a new keyframe as well. And not just that, if I wanted to create a new keyframe before my beginning, so to say, so extend the beginning, I can do that as well by clicking the plus button on the left side. So here, obviously, just to highlight it, is our timeline. And we're essentially creating a keyframe on the left side of it to place a keyframe before the beginning of our camera path. And that means if I place my camera where I want it to be and click the plus icon here, I will create an additional camera before our start. Exactly. Let me first block out a camera path real quickly so we have something to work with. And whoops, have a look at. And there we go. So on the timeline now, you will see we have our keyframes displayed as triangles or diamond shapes. You see here, like before, we can click these on our timeline to access one of those keyframes. Like before, we can also click that keyframe on in the Enscape interface directly to access it. And like before, I can perform changes to it. And if I want to save it, the most important button is the update button right here. If I want to Enscape not to forget the changes I've performed here, click the update button and it will be saved. One more thing, previously already you could of course place a keyframe somewhere between two existing keyframes by simply clicking on the camera path. I can now also press this button between two diamond shapes, between two keyframes, to place it here. And that will place a keyframe exactly where I'm at in Enscape at the moment. So if I want to, have a turn like this, this is an easy and quick way to do that. Okay, let's have a closer look at the interface now. So first of all, if you want to create a new camera path or save or load your existing one, you can do it by pressing this button here. The grid lines that you've been used to in our previous version of the keyframes, you can now enable or disable it whenever you want using this setting right next to it. The total duration slider below that is same as before. However, as you see, we got rid of this carousel slider that you would grab and try to move to a reasonable time position, so to say. You can now enter these values numerically, or you can click using these arrows here. Let's go with a total duration of 30, by the way. That is my beloved duration. If I want to preview my camera path, I can always do that by pressing the P key. That hasn't changed. If I want to click a button to do that, I can also press this play button down here. So here too, we've adapted our user interface to be a little more self-explanatory. And we have the stop preview button right next to it. By the way, a little tip, because that is also something that many people are not aware of. If you ever want to start a preview from an existing keyframe, you can always press the preview button or the P key in here to start the preview. So if you have a really long camera path you're working on, you don't have to start from the beginning all the time. Okay, now you might have noticed that we have these additional this additional part here, which is only visible when I'm in a keyframe. Now these are the values that you can set per keyframe, which we also had before. They are now outside of your Enscape area, so you can see the entire visualization in one go, and it's not blocking a part of the Enscape view or interface. Like before, make sure you're in the keyframe you want to be in to perform the changes. So for example, if I want to key the daytime, I'll first go into my first keyframe and enable time of day. Let's set this to something maybe, oh, that's kind of early. Let's go with 7 a.m. so we have a nice sunrise. And of course, click update. And like before, we also see this indication that we have changed a value for this particular keyframe in here. Also, and this is new, we have a total number of 4 timelines down here, and you will see each keyed value on here as well. So let's place another, or let's set up another time of day to transition to, maybe like that. And you see indicated by this gray little circle that we have set a time of day value for this particular keyframe. Once again, don't forget to update. And if we preview now, we will see that the sun rises, the clouds are moving across the sky, and we have a nice, well, time lapse or daytime change going on. Yeah, apart from that, these values stayed the same as well. So here you have the timestamp value, which tells Enscape reach this camera at second, whatever I choose here. So that lets us control the speed and the velocity, so to say, throughout the video. The focal point, which we've set up earlier, the distance of that depth of field where it's the most sharp, or the most sharpened. You can control that here, and the field of view, meaning a zoom effect. Simply enable this checkbox per keyframe, and you will see those changes will transition throughout the video if you've set them up correctly. Exactly. Now, if we've finished our video and want to save it as an actual video file, the export button is now down here in the lower right corner. And one more really handy addition is we've heard sometimes a little bit of complaints that we had this one setting for the rendering resolution and for the video resolution. And if someone wanted to perform 4K renderings all the time, but export the video in full HD, they would need to switch back and forth, and that could get a little bit tedious. So we decided to add a prompt for video rendering. Whenever you start exporting a video, you can select your desired resolution, compression quality, and frames per second. I always recommend to leave them as they are, but you can select them here and then click export, save a place, or choose a place where to save it, and Enscape will get going and render it in an incredible speed like before. Okay, so that finishes my tour through the new Enscape user interface. We hope you'll enjoy it and you'll feel it as much improving your workflows as we do and as comfortable to use. And with that, I would give back to Peter, or yeah, already happened. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think now is the time for Q&A. So Gemma, if you want to help us out.
Sure, we have had quite a few questions coming in, so let's get started with these. So first one up, what is the difference between screenshot and batch rendering?
So I can take that. Screenshot will perform one single rendering. Batch rendering opens up an interface where you can select any number of your 3D views, scenes, name views, etc., and start the rendering in one go. So if you have like 100 renderings to do and you don't want to click every single time, you can start them that way, let it run overnight, for example, and return tomorrow to to 100 finished renderings.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kai. Next question, does changing settings in the Enscape application automatically update in the CAD software, or are they independent? Josh, perhaps do you want to take that one?
I was gonna say, where'd Kai go? No, it would only take effect in the Enscape window itself, because it's a visual setting that is only controlling the Enscape viewer.
Brilliant, thank you.
He's back.
Disappeared then. Right, let me get another one here. Josh, another one for you. Where can I find the assets, i.e. trees, materials, furniture, etc.?
In the asset library, there's a couple different options where you can filter between the different sections of them, so trees, cars, people, vehicles, those types of things.
Brilliant. And Kai, perhaps one for you. Can you update an existing view location, or do you still have to create a whole new view?
If I may, so if you change the view in the CAD in the design application, that will be updated in Enscape as well. There is no functionality in Enscape to update an existing view.
Okay, great. Regarding the video editor, we had a few questions around that. Is it possible to edit the final keyframe timestamp to lengthen or shorten the entire video?
For that, we now have the total duration. I know where you're coming from. You would expect the final time or the final keyframe to allow you to edit the timestamp. I'll certainly discuss this with product management.
Thank you. How can we slow down the speed between keyframes without impacting the overall video length?
Yeah, I would say leave a timestamp for the last keyframe. With that ruled out, I would set a second keyframe shortly before the end, set a timestamp for that, and then change the timestamps before that.
Okay, great. Another question around keyframes. Can different visual settings be applied to individual keyframes?
Nope.
Okay, trick question there. Let's see what else we have. A few people have been asking about panoramas. Is there any, they've asked, can you talk more about panoramas? I'm not sure if there's, perhaps Stefano, you could send us another question with a little bit more information there.
Yes, I can, to answer that question.
Okay.
I mean, just to cover the question a little bit, of course, we have treated the panoramas really little in this webinar. Panoramas are really easy to use. That's why we didn't go into that, and nothing has changed about the functionality. You create a panorama, you find it in your Manage Uploads window on the design application site. And from there on, they're really, really useful because you can do with it what you want. You can export it as an image file, or you can upload it to our cloud, generate a QR code or a link, and share it with anybody immediately.
Thank you. For web upload function, is there a model size limit? So I'm guessing, is there a maximum size limit for web uploads?
There is, I think. I mean, the problem is you cannot really derive the upload size from the project size, because textures and the different kinds of how these design applications handle their projects. There is a limit. I would need to check back. I think it was. Josh, you know,
I know for the standalone executable, it's 2 gigs.
That is true, but that is a Windows.
By
the way. For the web channel, I think it was a 500 megabyte, but it's it has been rarely hit, and it's really hard to say from the design application project file. how big it will be. So since Enscape is quick and easy, I would recommend to just try it. And if it reaches that limit, just use a section box to cut off a little bit or split it up into 4 parts, for example.
Okay, great. Next one, how can we create a rendered 3D model where my client can easily navigate and change perspective views?
Mark your views as favorites and then create an exe standalone file, and they will be available in that standalone file like before.
Okay, thank you. Another question here. When linking presets to different views for batch rendering, will we be able to set a different time of the day for each view as well?
That should work by default. If you have a certain time set in a 3D view, it will be recognized in the batch rendering progress. Depending on the design application that you are using, there's sometimes prerequisites, so to say, for datetime to be saved in those views. For example, in Revit, it's best to use still for the sun settings in those views. As a rule of thumb, if you create a view from within Enscape, by default, it should always save the datetime, unless you're currently in a 3D view that has this datetime option disabled in the design application. Enscape will create a copy of that and then also not store it. So it will essentially just copy the parameters from the view that you're currently in.
Great. Is it still possible to push the views you make in Enscape back to your design software?
There's still that option in Revit to hit render into document.
Fantastic. Good, thank you. Can you update an existing view location, or do you still have to create a whole new view?
We've had that. You can control it in the design application, change it there, and that will be communicated to Enscape. For Enscape, you will have to create a new one. So from within Enscape.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, I'm just checking a few more now. Let's have a look here. It says, right, someone says, I love panoramas. Well, that's nice. Is it possible to overwrite a web location, i.e. the Enscape hosted one, if re-rendered, or is the only option to create a new link? We've been
That's an awesome question, right? Right now, it's still necessary to create a new link. However, we are working on something in that direction.
It's been a popular request, yeah, for sure. And we're listening.
How long does the web standalone live on the web?
If you create the standalone from a trial license, it lives for 2 weeks. Apart from that, if you have a valid Enscape subscription, it lives pretty much indefinitely. We reserve the right for us if a user goes over, I think it was 2 GB upload limit, to at some point delete them. However, this has never happened before, and we are far from reaching our limits there. So I would say don't worry about it.
Thank you very much. Can you update a camera position when using Enscape through SketchUp?
Kai, you're muted.
Kai, yeah.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you have the amazing and not to underestimate synchronize views function from SketchUp. So you can click one button and control the Enscape camera using your SketchUp camera. If you're referring to a SketchUp scene, yeah, you can adapt them in SketchUp and they will be updated in Enscape.
Great, thank you very much. Let me just check here. It says, how can I have the best render quality in Revit? Is it related to materials or lighting? Any tips?
This is a question that comes up often. What setting do I have to change to get the best, or to get my renderings to look like they do in your showcase, for example? There's no real setting for that. Of course, we have the rendering quality. You can set it to ultra, and that will improve reflections a little bit. But really, that doesn't make the major difference. The major difference you will achieve, the one thing that you need to add to your visualizations to make them look believable and convincing is detail. And the quickest way to do that is add a horizon background to have this perfectly flat horizon, well, disrupted a little bit. Use assets, because we have so much details that we put in that just for you to use with a couple of clicks. And most importantly, materials. Materials. Most importantly, bump maps. Adding bump or height maps, that gives all that tiny detail that really sells an image and makes it look like a photograph. And of course, yeah, lighting too. Make lighting play a role in your rendering. The best renderings have lighting somehow, be it natural sunlight or be it artificial lighting. Make it a character of your scene, and that's it. It will look amazing.
Brilliant, thank you. A question about the educational license. Does that still exist?
Yes, it is,
Yes.
or it does. You can, yeah, you can access it through our website. I'm not sure if anybody wants to share a link or show it.
I can grab that in a moment. Yep, that is still running, and we are making some changes to our educational license, so we'll be communicating that shortly. Can assets be modified?
Assets?
Yeah, can assets be modified?
Nope. You can load your own custom assets. You can load custom assets from OBJ, FBX, and GLTF files, but you cannot access our assets that we provide in that editor.
Is it possible to increase grass height to imitate a meadow?
So
Yes,
there's
it
a
is.
couple.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Josh,
go for
you
it.
can. I don't want to answer everything.
Oh, man, you're doing good. You're good. You're quicker on the unmute button. So there's 3 different ways to adjust the grass height. It's through keywords. So short grass, tall grass, or wild grass. Anything beyond that, currently it's not yet available. It is a feature that we're looking at exploring.
So that is true for Revit. For all the other design applications, we have our material editor. And if you have your grass material, it's obviously of type grass. And in that material editor, you will have grass length available. So it's essentially the same as in Revit, but in Revit, we have just those fixed values. And in all the other design applications, you can use it, or you can control it using a slider, both grass height and grass variation. So how kempt it looks.
Okay, we've got another couple of minutes, so let's just see if we can tackle a couple more. Does
more questions?
Enscape support? We have loads. Does Enscape support displacement? So
Yes, it does. First of all, in all the other design applications where we have our own material editor, you can select the type in your height map, either bump map, normal map, or displacement map. So that works straight out of the box. In case of Revit, if you use a bump map, there is a threshold. Revit has a bump map strength available in Slider from 0 to 1000. If you choose 0 to 499, that will be a bump map, and that will show you that will control the bump map strength. Once you hit that 500 threshold, the displacement area starts, and from 500 to 1000, you will have bump maps, and displacement maps, and they of course have a much stronger visual effect. So yeah, play around with it carefully. I recommend to start with something like 550 to see the actual displacement map effect, and it's gorgeous.
Someone just said, thanks for the tip on bump versus displacement maps. So good one there. All right, we have had quite a lot of questions coming today. So I think what we will do is take a look at these after the webinar and make sure that we have got back to everyone via email in the coming days. But I think with that, I think we're going to wrap up the webinar. Thank you for spending the last hour with us. We are really thrilled with Enscape 3.0, and we hope you enjoy using it too. Can't wait to see your renders. If you feel free to share those in the forum. And just let me just mention that there will be a survey that will pop up now when you exit the webinar. Please give us your feedback. Let us know how we can improve these webinars for next time. And with that, I will say thank you, Peter, Josh, and Kai, for presenting to us today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much, everyone.